Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
And hello.
Hey.
What's up, girl?
How you doing?
Oh, let's go ahead and stop recording and just
Right
do
now.
this.
Here we
Right
go.
now. Rip everything off this table.
It's a little table.
It's a very tiny table.
But that's
Oh
all
my
you
gosh.
need. A little bit of room.
Just a little bit of room. Hey,
What?
speaking of a little bit of room, I was in a little bit of a room recently. Little VR room.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. You were the best
We're
entertainment to
we're
watch.
we're in Colorado right now.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, which is
Yep.
everybody,
Right.
you just went along with it. Yep.
Yeah,
For those
that's
of you
where
who
we're
don't
at.
know, yeah.
And you tried VR and you looked like a maniac.
Oh my gosh! The minute I put on the VR headset, I was like, "Ah!" And I start laughing hysterically.
Yes.
I start doing
You
my.
did your cackle. The cackle laugh, which is like,
I do. That's not
it's
that.
like an old man cackle laugh. It's hysterical. It's the best, though. It brings me so much joy. And you're punching the air and you're swiping. You almost hit me in the face.
I did almost hit you in the face, but I wasn't the only one. Like so, one person after another. We were hanging out for context. Of those of you who don't know, we were hanging out
Our
at a
friend
friend's
got a
house,
VR.
and our friend got a VR, and everyone in the family was taking turns jumping into this VR, and it was amazing watching each person like have their.
The whole world rocked.
Yeah. Like some of them were like, "Oh, this is so cool," and some of them were like, "Oh, this is freaking me out." Like, for instance, right when I got into one of the there was I put on the goggles, and then it opened me up into a room. And I felt like my brain felt like I actually went to another world. And I was like, "Ah!" And I was in between excitement and complete panic attack. I was like, no,
Where did I go?
am I going crazy? What's happening?
This is like drugs.
But then one of my favorite reactions was a special guest. What you don't know today is that we have a special guest here.
Dun, 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 dun.
Special guest.
Yep.
So Abby has someone that she talks about in her life all the time. And it's not Justin.
It was hard when we got married because I compared everything you did to this person.
You did everything I did.
Yeah, I was like, well, she lets me do this, and she says this. Oh, that sounds horrible.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
none of that.
this person that I was watching her, this guest,
Do the VR.
do the VR, and she was having a complete meltdown. She was trying to eat virtual donuts.
Oh,
the entire
she
time.
was.
She got
And it was
transported
cute. And
into an
she was scared.
office
She kept
space.
turning in circles.
Yeah, and she's like, "What's happening, everyone? What's happening?"
Yep.
But I think
then
that-
she did boxing and she got him down.
Yeah, she was terrible at that. But anyways, it was one of my favorite experiences.
Yeah.
With one
But
of,
then you played it for too long and you got
I
so
did.
sick.
I actually ended up playing VR too long, and I got really nauseous and laid on the couch the rest of the time, trying not to throw up everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a real thing. But I love it. It's the wave of the future, and I have no reason to be here anymore on planet Earth unless it's to be in VR.
Oh, I can think of a few things that I think are better in person than VR. Personally.
I see how people get really addicted to those things, by the way.
Oh, you do? Because real life isn't good enough for you? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, God. This men out there who are listening, this is how you dig yourself a hole.
Yeah, 100%.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Anyways.
we have a special guest. Do you want to introduce her or do you want me to?
No, I think you should introduce her.
Okay.
This was Pietze's.
You said her name.
Oh gosh,
It was too early.
Ah!
Her name is Pietze.
Her name is.
That's
Pietze.
Dutch for Patricia because people are like, "What is your best friend? Pepsi? Pizza?"
I didn't know it was Dutch for Patricia.
Really?
Yeah, your American name is so much more boring than your Dutch name.
I know. Well, the funny thing is that my parents wanted me to have an American name, and I'm like, but then never
called
used
you.
it, so it just creates a lot of problems. But yes, it's my.
I do
it's
like-
my Dutch. It's actually Fries, which is like a
Pietze
province
Fries.
of
No, that's
Fries.
the name of
Fries.
the
Oh
language.
gosh.
It's Fries.
Oh
Yeah,
dear
that's the
Lord.
name of the language.
That's what Dutch language is?
No,
this is
that's just a dialect. I mean, it's like it's
dialect
its own
of
language. It's like a
Dutch.
Oh.
province of Holland.
Oh,
They have
okay.
their own flag. It's like its own country almost.
so
But they're
cool.
considered part of the
Now,
Netherlands.
now over there, just really quick, I have to know.
Okay.
Sure.
In Dutch.
In
Dutchland?
Dutchland?
In Dutchland?
In Dutchland?
Holland? It's Holland, right?
Yes. Yes.
I
just
just
want to let you
my
guys.
face. I knew it was Holland, but then you looked at me and I was
Well,
like,
because
wait
I'm
a
laughing
second.
because I've never actually been to Holland. My grandparents immigrated over,
Yeah.
and so I'm fully American. But yes, I do have Dutch heritage. Go ahead with your question, Justin. I will answer on behalf of
I'm
my
ready.
people.
Now over there
Yes,
Do
is
they say going Dutch over in Holland?
I don't think that they do.
that because that means cheap SOBs in America. Basically.
I will let you know though, the
That's
Dutch
real.
are some of the cheapest people.
But they also
Like-
get rich because of being
Yeah, but
cheap.
they are cheap.
But they are cheap.
And Frisians are probably even like more cheap.
My sister's super cheap like that. I'm sure she's listening to this.
I'm
but
sure she's Dutch
too. She goes, "Let's go Dutch all the time." Yeah, okay. You mean you don't want to pay for my food?
awesome.
That's funny.
Love
okay,
you, Katie.
wait. Banter. Let me tell who this is.
Well, I just want to know one
oh,
thing.
okay, go ahead.
I legitimately
Okay.
want to know: do they actually use Patricia is a normal name over here,
Yes.
right? Is Pietze a normal name over there?
Yes, it is. It
Because
would
it's so
actually
not
be
normal
pronounced
here.
Pietze.
Pietze.
It is? I've never heard that.
It's more like
Pietze?
Pietze.
Pizza. I bet that's wrong
That's
too.
why it sounds
I
a
bet
lot
you don't
more
know
like pizza.
anything
Yeah.
about your own name.
You
But
don't
it's
know.
it's the feminine version of Peter.
Aww.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thoughts.
Information no one
Patricia.
cares about.
Yep.
Hey, go
Okay,
Abby.
Yeah.
All right, so it's pretty miraculous. Pietze is one of the biggest miracles in my whole life. When I was born, and that's very deep. I don't know how to start that story, but I prayed for siblings because I wanted siblings so bad. And my mom got miraculously pregnant and then she miscarried that baby. And it was really sad for all of us. She went into menopause and she went into a deep depression. She never pulled out of it. And it was really sad for me because I loved people and I loved being around other kids. And I wanted like 6 kids in our family. And right after that happened, it's so interesting because I prayed that my mom would get pregnant. It was very confusing as a kid that like you feel like, oh, this miracle happened. And then, oh, wait, the miracle didn't happen. The miracle died. Like, oh, what do you do with that? It's like
super tragic.
very
It
confusing.
messes up a kid.
What is interesting is when we look back on the timeline, and I never could have known this then, and I actually didn't figure it out till probably a year ago. When I look back on the timeline, that right after the miscarriage is when Pietze's family moved to our town. And I remember going over to their family. They have 6 children. There's 5 boys and Pietze. She is the princess. I went over, though, when I met her, and I was so sad because her older brother was my age. And I was like, a boy? What? I was so sad.
What, you just felt like you took your place or something? Like,
No, I
No,
because
she wanted a
Pietze was
girl.
younger.
She
was
Oh,
younger than me.
Decided
right.
right offhand that she couldn't befriend me because I was younger.
Yeah, I was an
felt
ageist.
judged.
Oh,
I was
got
an
it.
ageist
Yeah.
back then, back in the wee age of 7. And so we ended up becoming friends, although I also became friends with her whole family. And I pretty much lived over there and she lived at my house. And she is much more like a sister to me than anyone. We have gone through all kinds of life things. And I honestly cannot, like, pretty much most of the success in my life, like having stability and having good relationships and making good choices in my life has come from her.
Yeah, and you guys like,
Oh.
yeah, that was so sweet.
I know. I felt
I was
so
g-
loved.
I was gonna say like you guys.
I don't feel the same way, but but I love that you do. It's totally mutual.
And you guys did a good job of like even going through a season of like weathering through hating each other.
we
for
have
who-
gone through.
Oh,
She's
we've
like a
gone
sister.
through many. Tonight we were just talking about how we got into one fight where we were rolling around on the ground, pulling each other's hair, literally over a Pooh Bear watch. Pooh Bear watch. That was popular back in junior high
Yeah.
for some weird reason.
And I think sometime we will do a podcast about different seasons of friendship because we have been friends now for, I'm really old, but like 27 years.
yeah.
And
it is a long time.
that's a long time. And we've had a lot of different seasons where we were the closest, seasons where we were like sisters, seasons where we couldn't stand each other, seasons where we had to grieve our relationships changing. We'll do a whole podcast about that.
No,
That's
great.
not what this is about.
That's great. So we're going to introduce you as the Gale.
The Gale?
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm the Gail. She's the Oprah. I will proudly be Gail. I love CBS News. I will proudly be Gail.
Yes.
I don't need to be on ABC. I'm good with CBS.
That's hysterical. So we brought you on, and I'm just going to make you share like part of your story. This is kind of like an introduction because you're going to be probably a guest that comes on pretty, as often as we can. You'll be the Gail.
I'll show up occasionally.
All right.
She prepared me for Justin.
Yeah, she was total preparation.
And in some ways, Justin and I have similar personalities.
Yes.
Like we're get her done kind of.
Yes, you guys are.
So
and
I
we're
tried
full of
Justin.
wisdom.
Oh, and we're good looking.
Yeah, and we're creative.
And
oh my gosh,
steady.
and we're so smart.
Everybody loves us.
I know. It's crazy how that worked out, isn't it?
Lucky
I
you,
did.
Abby.
I married my best friend. Literally, you're
weird.
my best friend, and also you remind me of her.
Yeah.
And your husband is a lot like me.
Yes, it's true.
Neither of us like to shower.
Don't like to shower, have to be asked to shower. Super
that's
easygoing.
Yep.
Fun loving.
Fun, loving, loyal.
Loyal.
Yeah.
We're also all
Or
the
codependent,
things.
whatever.
Or either way,
Okay.
Tomato, tomato.
Tomato, tomato. So, because you're going to be on a lot, we wanted to kind of introduce you. And there's a couple parts of your story that I love so much that I thought it's just so encouraging. I have listened to you share this part of your story multiple times, and I get moved by it, even though I lived through it with you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to be able to share with our listeners kind of even, I think I set up this podcast when I was telling this story about when you came into my life, where like now looking back, I was so sad that my mom miscarried one child, but I ended up getting 6 instead.
Yeah.
6 siblings.
Yep.
And it ended up actually changing my life to have your family that contrasted the painful things in mine and that saved me. So hindsight, I can look back and see that the story all along was being crafted for my good.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your story. So why don't you tell the listeners about what great advice I give you, and we'll start there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, okay, Oprah, come down a few notches. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the easiest way to say it is that I got married really young. And
you were a baby.
I was a baby. I was 21.
And your husband was...
He was 18.
You
When we
cradle
got married.
robber.
He
couldn't drink alcohol at your wedding, right? Yeah, because he's 18.
He was 18. I don't know what country you live in, but in the U.S., it's a little
21.
bit older. But anyways, and he turned 19 the next day, and I always tell him I'm the greatest birthday present he ever got.
I bet you gave him a birthday present to remember.
Oh, I did.
Oh.
I mean, I know you did.
I've gotten some of those.
Yep. Birthday sex is good, especially when you're a virgin.
Oh, yeah.
I rocked his
the
world.
best. Yes, you did.
Okay. Anyways,
For
that's
one
another.
second, for the whole second, his world was changed.
Yes, he was in his sexual prime when we got married. I'm like, you can never speak to young men about like having to wait because you didn't have to.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, it's real.
Anyhow, so we got married really young. I think we've been married 12 years. You guys have been married 11, right?
10.
10. Okay, so
you've
we've
been
been married
11.
11. And basically during us getting engaged, my entire world that I had built, I'd been building a ministry during that time, and it tragically fell apart in a very
Devastating way.
yeah, devastating and traumatic way. And so basically through that, everything that I had worked for,
Your family fell apart. Everything you had built a production company.
yeah, and
That fell
apart. And I had lost people that were really close to me because of it. It
Lots
split
of
the church
betrayal.
that I was
Yep.
a part of.
Mm-hmm.
It split the ministry that I was building. All of it fell apart. And so that was while we were engaged. So 3 months after we got married, I completely have a nervous breakdown, start hyperventilating, can't breathe all of a sudden. I didn't know
Panic
what was happening.
attacks are going on.
Well, that's what it turned out to be. they literally thought I was dying. Like the doctor thought I had a clot in my lung. They like brought me in for
wow.
emergency
Oh, wow.
surgery. It turned out it was just panic attacks. But I'm so glad they didn't cut me open. I never experienced one before.
They didn't cut me
And
open.
if you've ever had
Talk
one, you
about
feel like you're
malpractice.
dying. You feel like you're dying when
I
you
know.
have them.
Oh, I know.
Oh, he knows.
Yeah, they're horrible.
Yeah.
So during that time, we made the amazing decision that we were going to put everything we had in storage and move out to Wisconsin, where my husband's brother lived. Because we're like, what else should we do? We'll just move out to Wisconsin. And I told my husband a month before that, I was like, I will never move to Wisconsin. But then on a whim, in the middle of a panic attack, I just like, okay, life is horrible here.
Let's get out.
So we pack all of our stuff up and we move to Wisconsin, and immediately we get there and we just hit, again, hardship. We decide to move in with his brother and his wife and his brother's wife in a little condo. So we're living in a bedroom.
Small.
It was this 2-bedroom
and you guys
condo.
visited us.
Yes.
We visited.
And we, it's so
it
small.
was the smallest thing ever.
Tiny.
The room we lived in, we slept on a futon, and you couldn't even walk around the bed. I mean, it was so small. But that was, it just felt like the only option at that time. And I think in some ways it was, even I knew then it was the right thing because I needed to get away from all the drama.
Right.
But it ended up being one of the hardest things. First of all, if you don't know Colorado, it's super sunny. So then actually being,
That's real.
yeah, it is a really sunny state. We have like one of the sunniest states in the U.S. So moving to the Midwest where it is
Gray.
so dark and cold and gray. I literally, because my family's from LA, I thought I've lived in Colorado. I can totally
do winter.
Oh, I can totally
I
do
did
winter.
snow.
I have lived in the winter state. I knew nothing. I was an
knew
idiot.
Nothing. I was naive.
I think 1 month, the month of January, the sun didn't come out for 30 days.
I can't even. I mean, we're from California, so we're pansies. Sun pansies.
But we did a summer of last year.
Oh yeah, because there was fires, so we
Yeah.
didn't see the sun for
like-
3 months.
Oh, it
3
drives
months.
you crazy.
yeah.
Oh, no,
you think
you're
you're
like
gonna
having
die.
Oh
total
yeah,
meltdown.
especially if you're used
Yeah.
to the sun. And then I was commuting an hour to go to school, and
In blizzard.
there was a tornado. I was on the highway in the middle of a tornado in the bottom
my
of my
gosh.
car. When I was like, "What is happening?"
Isn't that the
to me?
scariest and coolest thing all at the same time?
Oh, it was. I don't know if I thought it was cool, but it was definitely scary.
For
I
a
think
man,
a guy would
yes.
think it was awesome. I was like, Lord, just take me now.
Take me now. So
But
it was horrible.
It was horrible.
season.
It was horrible. We had tons of money issues, crazy things come up. And so I just felt I was grieving, and I fell into really deep depression. And then, of course,
Which that happens. Like you're talking about a season where, and I think lots of people go through this, is when the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. I kind of explain it like the pillars that have held your life in place, like the things that feel stable and immovable, when all of them get knocked down at once. And I think everybody goes through at least one season like this in their life, where everything that they're used to and that they could count on, that they thought they knew, that all gets stripped away. And it is like feeling naked and exposed and raw and triggered. It's you're just triggered for like 3 years straight.
Oh, absolutely. And there was so much. And the funny thing is, even tonight, you and I were reminiscing, and you got married. You met Justin
Right.
the day after I got married, right? Or
yeah, the next week. The week after you got married.
And so it's funny because I was totally fine with me falling in love and you being single and being my like girl
Being
on the
the
side,
the third wheel.
But then you got married, and so then like even that relationship, which is like
Changed.
my closest, like my sister,
Yeah. It was like the pillar relationship.
So it was just
Utter
so,
abandonment.
absolutely,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many people
I felt
abandoned you for things you didn't do. In
Oh
that
yeah,
season.
yeah,
Like, because it was none of the drama was about you. You were just a casualty of it.
yes, absolutely. And so it was just a really awful time, and I didn't have coping skills. And so it basically just came out in my marriage. We were super young. And during this time, we didn't really.
Johnny took a lot of black eyes during that season.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a fighter. You saw me yesterday.
That's real.
I played Creed, and I am good.
I've been practicing on my husband for years for VR.
Yeah, so it was a really dark and sad time. And I just remember during that time I was contemplating so much, like, I want to be with my husband, And I can't see myself growing old with anybody else, but I can't be with you right now.
I know.
But-
And I
Totally.
remember you
It felt
called me.
logical in my mind.
She literally called me and she's like, I think we should date other people. I'm not ready to like not be with him, but I think I would like to date other people. I was like, what?
I know.
is
I was on
this?
crazy train.
It was
But
hysterical.
that's what happens when you're so triggered. Like things that are not logical make you. That's why we moved to Wisconsin.
You're looking
in the
for
middle.
relief and
Yes.
everything outside of you.
Oh,
like,
yes. So-
do I just get rid of my husband? Do I just move somewhere else?
And
what
you
do I
think
do?
any circumstance, like if I move across the country,
That
maybe
will
I need
fix
to get
it.
rid of my husband. That will fix
That will
it.
fix
Yeah.
it.
So I remember one day I was talking to Abby, and I always say, I'm like, it's really great to have friends that will pity you. And it feels really good in the moment, but it's even better to have friends that will tell you the truth.
Oh,
And-
boom. That is like a meme.
Yeah,
Mic
there you
drop.
go.
There you go.
And that is one thing that Abby's always been. I think we've been in each other's
Non-pitier.
lives. Yeah, but I
Yep.
mean, she'll tell me, like, if I call her to process a fight, she'll be like, well, here's what you did wrong. You know? I'm like, shut up. Shut up, Oprah. So I remember I called her one day and I was just going on and on, like, maybe I need to move back home to Colorado. Maybe I need to leave my husband. I don't know what to do. I kept saying over and over again, I don't know what to do. I'm so lost. I'm so stuck. I remember just really quietly, she said, okay, well, do you want me to tell you what I think?
See, I'm nice like that. I'm not just going to
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
you.
yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
ask if you want to know.
Yeah, it depends on the mood. But
Or the
she
time
said,
of the month.
yeah, exactly.
Hey, now you two. This is not
I'm loving this
getting us
dynamic.
happy.
That's the best.
Yeah, so she's like, do you want me to tell you what I think? And I just said, yeah, honestly, tell me what you honestly think. Because I was so desperate that I was like, I will do anything that anybody says to get out of what
Yeah.
I'm in right now, because I'm
Yeah.
so lost and so miserable. And she said, oh, and during this time, I should mention that my husband was in a band that toured full time.
Oh, yeah,
So
it's
I was
rough.
by myself
Oh, yeah.
in Wisconsin
With
while
no
he was
friends.
gone with no friends,
no
no
son.
community, no family.
No son.
Yes, no son. And we didn't make a lot of money in the band. So, I was working and I was just miserable. So she said, you're not miserable because of the band, because I hated the band. You're not
Right.
miserable because of the band. You're not miserable because your life fell apart and everyone left you. And you're not miserable because you live in Wisconsin. Do you want to know why you're miserable? And I was like, yes, tell me. I've been waiting for this answer. And she's like, the reason you're miserable is because of you.
Oh, dang.
And that's what it's like to be friends with me.
Yep, there you go. There's the truth.
That's what it's like to be married to you.
No. It's the worst. And the best. It
And the
changed your
best.
life.
It changed my life.
Uh-huh.
But it was just the right thing to say at the right time.
Yeah.
Like she definitely had discernment to know like something you're believing lies and you're seeing something that is so false that you're digging yourself into a pit,
Yeah.
and I'm going to give you a handout right now.
There's times for the compassionate, like, yeah, I'm just going to sit here.
Absolutely.
I'm just not saying. But yeah, she was probably really tracking, like, no, Pietze needs to hear this in
Yeah.
this moment.
And I was so receptive. I didn't fight it.
were.
I wasn't defensive. I was like, okay. And
What
so,
do I do?
And so, yeah, that was my next question. I said, okay, if you're right, then what do I do? And one thing that you had said that just really like hit me so hard is you were like, if God is keeping you in Wisconsin and if God is allowing Johnny to be in this band right now and you can't get out of your circumstance, then there's a gift in it for you. And you might not be able to see it right now. And she said to me, she's like, all you've chosen to see is all the ways that God hasn't come through for you. And that's all you've been focused on. Instead, you could have focused on the ways that he has come through for you.
Which, P.S., I'm laughing so hard because I would say the last 3 years have been that season for me. The season you're talking about where all the pillars fall out and it's all. And I'm laughing because literally a week ago I had that exact same conversation with Justin where I'm telling him about all the ways God didn't come through and all of the things that are horrible in my life. And he's having to be like, look at what is happening. But yeah, full circle.
Full circle.
You got to
There
eat
go.
the advice you give away.
Oh, you're eating it, girl.
I'm eating it.
Yum, 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 yum.
So I just basically follow up with saying, you're right. So what do I do next? And she's like, I think you need to go home And I think that you need to apologize to God, and you need to go home and you need to apologize to your husband, and you need to tell him all the things that you love about him and why you married him. And you entertained the idea of divorce, and now you need to entertain the idea of life, and you need to change your perspective.
Oh, that's good.
And
so she said, quit bitching and moaning.
Yeah.
pretty much, which didn't
Really what I
stop.
was trying to say is, hey, don't be a victim to
Yeah,
life.
totally.
Take ownership. You have a
Yeah.
lot of things you do. You have a lot of things that are painful.
Yes.
Because that's true. It was
Yeah.
horribly painful. I still to this day have so much compassion for what you went through. Very few people could ever understand
Yeah.
if they weren't in that season how devastating it
Sure.
was.
So it was very
But-
viable for her to actually have this pain
Have
and
deep
express
grief
it.
and
Yeah.
pain. But what I found, and this is true in my own life, we've talked about that a lot in the 3 years for this journey I've been on. Even when you are going through things where everybody around you is making choices that are destroying your life, if you give up your personal power, that's when you become a victim.
Absolutely. And victims can never change their circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all the power's in somebody else's hand. If they're
Yep.
the one causing the problem, you got to wait for them to stop being
Yep,
the
right.
problem.
You are at the mercy of others.
Yeah.
And I think I needed somebody to give me permission to take
Your
my
power
power back. And I think through this, so basically I'll circle back to that, but basically that night I went home and I did exactly what she said. I mean, I just like cried out to God, and I was like, I haven't trusted you in my life. I fought against you, and I've victimized myself to you. And
Because you were acting like God's made me be in Wisconsin.
yeah. Oh, I felt
I'm
like
a
a complete
victim.
victim. Like, you've done this to
me, and I'm trapped.
And
Right.
and it's like, then God is the trump card.
Yeah.
Nothing else. So then you can't change anything. 'Cause
No.
God has done it, and
Yeah,
nothing.
God made this happen, and I had no choice
Yep.
in it. And
And
so
I think so many people
yeah.
live that way,
Oh,
where
it's
they feel
so
victim
broken.
to God. And
Yes.
so you're just at the mercy of whatever goes wrong in your life.
Yeah.
You know? And so I went home and I cried out, and then Johnny came home and I wrote him a letter, and basically it was like one of the only times that I've seen my husband cry. He's not really a crier.
no, he's
I
not.
always say that was the second time I've seen him cry, and everybody says, what was the first? And I say our wedding night, which is a true story. It is so true.
He's so sentimental. That
Um,
first time. It was like the movies for him.
Oh, it was the movies.
But he was really affected by you
Yeah.
taking ownership.
Yep, I completely took ownership, and I decided from that day on that I was going to completely change. And one thing that I realized in that is I was like, I began to understand the concept of what you think about becomes your reality.
Yes.
So if I'm only focusing on all of the bad things that
Yeah.
are going wrong, that is the reality that I'm
100%.
seeing. So it literally took me retraining my brain, kind of like what Abby talks about a ton when she
Yeah.
talks about walking out of suicide
Yeah.
and suicidal thoughts and self-hatred. For me, it was literally walking out of victimhood
Yeah.
and walking out of just seeing the negative in everything. And so from that day forward, I literally decided that life was going to be a gift,
Yep.
that no matter where I was at, it was going to be a gift, and that no matter what circumstance I found myself in, that there was going to be gift in it for me, and that I could see the good, and that I could hold on to the good.
It's so good.
And the interesting thing is that a week later, Johnny started, because before that he was only touring on the weekends. He decided to tour full time, which was like my
No
worst
way.
nightmare.
No way.
But
Totally.
I'll tell you this. Here's what the miracle was, is that I was okay. I let
Because
him go.
of your internal decision.
And I decided, like, if this is the path that he's on, I'm going to stay in Wisconsin, and I'm going to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to release him to be in his place, and I'm going to be in my place. And my place is going to look different.
Which is really powerful.
And
Yeah.
what I love about this is that this is setting the stage and the foundation for these amazing other pieces of your story that are about to come out, and we're going to get into what it looks like even when we're not able to see our story and we haven't seen all of it. We don't actually have any clue like what this season of time is
What
actually
the gifts actually are.
what they are for, and it takes time to go through so many more things before we go, oh my gosh, if I hadn't have been in Wisconsin and hadn't have learned how to choose in, my life would be
couldn't have
totally
handled-
what was
Yeah.
about to come down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really like beautiful unraveling.
But before we're going to jump into
Yep.
that, but really quick, one thing I just want to say, because I love when you talk about this. When you went to your husband, I think you actually said that you repented for bringing an agreement with divorce. That
yeah, I took ownership. I took ownership for inviting the idea of divorce into our marriage.
Yeah.
And I took ownership for the fact that I entertained that.
Yep.
And I just I just basically said, I'm taking ownership for doing that, and I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not going to do that. I'm here.
And I'm here, and I'm making the choice.
Oh yeah.
And then a week later he decides to tour, but now your heart is connected to him.
Absolutely. And that's not to say that we never
Totally
went through hard times again. And I didn't ever question, did I make the wrong decision? But I had that firm foundation of knowing that
I'm
I
not
could
going to go there in my mind.
Yeah. And that I had choice over my thoughts.
Yep.
Yeah.
That thoughts weren't like something that happened to me, but there's something that I manifested and there's something that I created.
Yeah.
So I could create the thoughts that I was thinking and then create the life
that you wanted.
That I wanted and that I saw around me. And the funny thing is that at that time we were living in a flat in the city. I was really happy. And a month later we decided to move back in with his brother in that little condo. But you know what? I remember thinking in that condo, and it was the most encouraging season for me because I was like, this was my worst nightmare, was moving back into this small little bedroom.
Right.
And having to commute again and feeling like I'm taking a step backwards. But I remember smiling one day, looking around that room and being like, I understand what it's like to not let your circumstances dictate your life.
So good.
And your state of being and your emotions.
Yep.
Because I remember just smiling and feeling joy, feeling
So
grateful
good.
for the room and feeling grateful for where I was at. And it was like something flipped in me that was just, it was like something unlocked for me.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. I remember my season in Montana, and we've talked a little bit about this, but even this moment where I'm going back and I work for my dad for 7 months, living in his basement with Abby, and I'm working back to electrical contracting, and I'm going, oh my God, I hate this. Why do I have to be doing this? But I hit this spot where I learned how to come alive, just like you, where I was in the back of a bar. And I'm putting in something into an electrical box, and a big smile goes across my face. And I'm like, I love that I'm here right now.
Yeah.
I am just happy.
Yes.
Even if this is what I do the rest of my life and nothing changes, but I'm doing electrical and working with my dad, that's fine because I have the power to be alive.
Right. And Abby and I were just talking about this last night, that sometimes I believe that God will allow you to go to the darkest place in your heart so that you can gain your power back there.
Yeah.
So that you can know that even that dark place that feels like, oh, I could never do that again.
Yes.
You actually know, yes, I can. And I can own it there, and I can find life there. And it has nothing to do with who I am and where I'm going and what I see, you know?
Yeah. I've had so many times where, I mean, again, this was this season for me, my worst case scenario in my family. The thing I had was I could never survive this. If this happened 3 years ago. And when it happened, it was the invitation.
Yeah.
Do you want to find out that you are actually powerful? And that was the same when we were in Montana. That was your worst case scenario. It happened to your parents. They moved in with their parents.
Yeah.
And it destroyed their marriage and destroyed your family. And so we literally were doing the exact thing. And I see this in all my clients. They end up having to do the thing they think will kill them.
Yeah.
And that can be the thing that drives the nail in the coffin, or it can be the thing that launches you out of the coffin.
Absolutely.
Where you're not afraid anymore, and you have you have connected to truth in the darkness, and then that darkness becomes joy and hope for you.
And you get to become the best version of yourself you could ever be.
Yeah.
Ultimately in those spaces.
And I will say this, I think that so many times in those dark places, the invitation is like a small whisper.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not going to come on a grand parade. It's not going to look beautiful. Real. It's like this song. I like this line. It says like a tiny crack in a prison wall. You feel like you're in prison.
Is that from the Moses movie or the Joseph movie?
No,
Oh, I thought that was you loved the Disney movies. I'm like, that's a Disney song somewhere, I'm sure.
That was a DreamWorks film. But anyways, but it comes sometimes in a small little glimmer in one choice.
Yep.
Like right now I'm going to stop thinking the way that I'm thinking, and I'm going to choose this. And it's not an easy choice, but the more you do it, the bigger that crack becomes. And the gateway to freedom actually then becomes a huge doorway.
So good.
To a huge, beautiful room.
Yes.
Yep.
But I just think so many times people think, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And they're waiting for this grand entrance of some opportunity or something. but that's not how it comes. It comes like a tiny crack in a prison wall.
Yes.
That's great.
You know?
That's so real.
Okay, so after you make this decision, you're in Wisconsin, your whole life has fallen apart, you decide that you want to start a family because that's the natural next progression.
Yeah, so it was actually 7 years.
Having kids will make us happy.
Yes. Well, it was actually 7 years later. So by this time, I had really just become content.
So
and
you've been
happy.
in Wisconsin for 7 years at this point?
7 years at this point.
Wow.
And
you really were in hell.
yeah, but you know what? Sometimes I had gotten so surrendered in my life about it that I didn't have the desperate need.
You'd embraced it.
Yeah, and I love like one of my favorite definitions of surrender is not giving up the thing that you want itself, but the desperate need to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's a great way to define it.
Like that's my way. It's actually not. It's from a book.
It's from a book that
we both read.
Yeah.
Surrender is I don't give up my desire, but I give up the belief that I can only be fulfilled and happy once that desire is fulfilled.
Yeah.
So I can be happy and fulfilled now.
Yeah. So
whether
7 years in, because I had let myself completely be released to like wherever I'm at, I'm going to be happy. I had found a great friend group. I'd found an awesome community and church to be a part of. And even though it wasn't my happiest place to live, like I wouldn't have chosen it, I was truly content and happy at this point. So we decide that we're going to start a family. And an interesting that had happened during that the first couple months in our relationship dark time is that I'd gone to a doctor and I was diagnosed with PCOS, which at that time there wasn't a ton of knowledge about it. There is now because it's so common.
Yeah.
But there wasn't. And so he basically said, you're not going to be able to get pregnant.
Wow.
It's going to be really like hard for you. And my husband was working at the hospital that time. I ran out crying. He found me. He just happened to see me, grabbed me, and he's like, this isn't the reality over a life.
I love it. He immediately spoke.
He spoke to it.
Truth.
And that actually counteracted what I thought. So I actually, during this 7 years, like healed myself naturally of it. But then when we went to get pregnant, I couldn't get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And,
which is so scary because you've had somebody tell you you won't be able to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And then you work really hard to get whole and healed, and then you still can't get pregnant. And it feels like what he said was true.
Yes, totally. And so, simultaneously during this time, somebody had said to me, I just feel like there is going to be a pearl of great price in your life. And, for me being a Christian, like that typically is referred to as the gospel, but she said it's not, or God's truth,
right.
But she's like, it's not that.
Right.
It's something else. I don't know what it is, but there's going to be something that costs you your life and you will lay it down gladly. And so
that's a great word. You're like, this is hopeful and not hopeful all at once.
But I had so much peace. I felt peace in it. I think probably because of all of my training that I didn't feel discouraged. I just felt like, okay, I'll tuck this away.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens.
Love
and so we're not able to get pregnant, and then somebody else comes up to me and I just feel that small whisper. Like, I just know this nudge, like they're going to tell me something that's going to change my life. Like they're going to tell me something. Like I know that they have something for me, and they come back into the room. There's the quiet invitation. Mm-hmm. They come back into the room and they're like, I just see a picture of you and you've been like in a hallway and you keep going up to doors and they're locked and you're not going to be able to get through, or you haven't been able to get through. But she said, you're about to come up to a door and it's about to open. And she's like, and I see that like you're in a lake and it's been frozen and it's been winter, but the ice is cracking. And she's like,
wow.
Then it got kind of funny. And she's like, I just see you and Johnny as fish and you're spawning and you're mating. And she's like, I never say this, but I feel like you're going to get pregnant.
Wow.
And she said, also, I feel like your business is about to explode and it's like just about to boom. So a week later, I get pregnant.
That is crazy.
This is after 10 months
so
of
a week
trying.
later, we're in the hot tub and we're doing it.
And we're spawning.
And we are spawning. That ice is broken.
That is incredible. So you'd been trying for 10 months. She comes and says, this is going to happen. And within a week, it happens.
Yep, it happens. And then while I was pregnant, I tripled my business.
Which is crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it just was total, like, I knew that
All
it
of
was.
it came to pass.
Yep. Now, sadly, during that time, I was maybe the sickest pregnant woman on
Oh,
the
you
face of the
were.
planet. Like, I think I threw up in every gas station bathroom around Wisconsin.
I know, because you had to drive.
Yeah, and I worked on video sets and photo shoots doing styling and
like,
hair and
put their
makeup.
makeup.
So
and then
I'm working on like these hot underwear models because I worked for an underwear company at the
yeah,
time.
totally.
And I'm like putting body makeup on them, and I am throwing up, and I'm fat and pregnant and miserable. And I was like, why?
What is my
Why?
life?
I went back into victimhood. Why, God? Do you really want to put me over the edge? But I remember during that time that I had been at one of my husband's concerts, and he was playing actually like a huge arena.
Oh.
And it was the Denver Coliseum. And so I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I'm by all these annoying teenagers. But my brother-in-law gets up, and he starts talking about a pearl of great price. And it was like in that moment, all of a sudden, like something just hit me so strong. I felt like a presence so strong. I felt God so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that the pearl of great price, that thing that woman had told me so long ago, was about the
baby
in my belly.
Wow.
And I started to shake and cry. And I had assumed, I was like, oh, it makes so much sense because I've been so sick.
Right. You're like, this is the great
yeah,
price.
that this has been the big
This is it.
sacrifice.
Yeah.
You know, this has been the huge sacrifice of my life.
Right.
And so I remember telling Johnny that night, I'm like, Johnny, she's the pearl of great price. And he started crying the third time he's ever cried. He starts crying, and he goes, we have to name her Pearl.
Ugh.
And so her first name is actually our Dutch traditional name,
Yeah.
and then her middle name is Pearl. And it's because of that, because we knew that her life would be marked by us sacrificing for her. Now, I didn't know what that meant at the time.
Totally.
You know, but I knew that that's what it was about.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I go on to give birth to her, and it was
She's
actually
beautiful.
Yep. And the birthing process was very redemptive for me because I
Yes.
kicked butt at labor and delivery.
I have got to say, I have watched you birth the child, and it is impressive. At the end of your second birth, I said, is that it? Because I was so expecting the
I know.
but because you did hypnobirthing, and kind of like what you've talked about, you get to choose what you believe.
It's mind over matter.
You really have owned that, and
Yeah.
so much so that it was an incredible birthing process.
You had to really need the hypnobirthing too, because she was a big baby.
She was a
my
I mean,
gosh.
I always like,
Both my babies were 9 pounds,
Yes.
2 ounces.
yeah, when I first looked at her, I thought she looked like the Michelin Man.
Oh, she was. You didn't know babies could have rolls
many
in the areas
rolls.
that she did.
Yep.
Yeah, she was the biggest. And it's funny, Johnny and I were like, we really want a chubby baby. And then
And
I was
you
like, why
got
did I
one.
pray for that? That was like the worst possible idea ever.
Yeah.
But
So you birthed her.
yep. And you know, day 1 is amazing. And day 2, I think she cried for 24 hours straight.
Oh.
And I remember I hadn't slept in 2 days because
Right.
I'd just given birth. It was horrible. And but unfortunately, that was just the beginning. And we walked into basically like a highly colicky child who the only time she wasn't crying is when she was nursing. And so the only way that I could get a break.
It's either my
It's to
nipples
shove
go
her on your
completely
boob.
raw.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
We
totally.
had a
Some
lot of
sleep.
issues. We had a lot of issues because at that point you're so tired, you're like, I don't even care. You're
Right.
just letting them stay on. But the only time that I could get sleep is when my husband was off of tour. He would stay up and drive her around for 2 hours while I would
Wow.
sleep. And then he
Wow.
would come back and I would nurse
Nurse
her for
her.
an hour.
And then
And
he'd
then
drive
he'd get
her
up
again.
and drive her.
Wow.
But
And-
that was only when he was not on tour.
Yeah.
So you were at home
and I
with
had
a
no
screaming
family at
baby
this point
that was
around
in
me.
town. Yep.
Yeah. And so again, it was this thing of returning to
The
choosing.
hardest season.
Yeah. Just feeling like in the fire. I felt so alone,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but choosing like gratefulness, choosing joy. I think gratitude is the best medicine
Oh, absolutely.
in the world, you know, so even down to small things like, God, thank you that I can drink clean water. You know, sometimes at your darkest moment,
Like,
that's
I
the
got
only
it.
one you
Thank you
got.
for toilets.
Yeah.
Thank you for toilet paper.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for a heater and for air conditioning.
I always say if you live in Western culture, you always
have
have something. So you can dig deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can dig deep.
Yeah.
And so, you know, at that time, I was starting to sense, so this went on for a year and a half of just complete crying. She woke up 6 times a night. I remember after we finally got her to sleep through the night, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I was exhausted. I hadn't slept in over a year.
Yeah.
You know, because it was nonstop. And there was definitely like this supernatural grace that we had to parent her. Like definitely with what I felt like was over her life and what I felt like that small
Those
nudge from
words
God.
that you had.
There was also grace because my amazing like patience just kicked in. Love kicked in a way that I had
It's
never
true.
seen
You never
before.
hit that child.
It is so true.
I mean, like, I was really amazed because with how at the end of yourself you were, that you actually only felt love towards her.
Yeah.
Which is not to shame people who don't, because listen, I get it. When you're at the end of your rope,
postpartum depression
is
is a
real
real
thing.
thing. And seasons are a real thing. And tolerance. I just knew that we had supernatural grace for our situation.
Totally.
And let me add something like right there on that. You know, when Paul Young, he's talked to us about the idea that there's only grace for today. There's not grace for tomorrow. And a lot of people will look at other people's stories and go, I could never do that. But there's not grace to do that until you're in it. And all of a sudden something hits you and you go, oh, I don't know. I just had an ability to do something I never could have done before.
Yeah. And it's amazing how much you can grow in capacity.
Yeah.
So what I can handle now, I could have never imagined that I could handle everything that I'm handling now, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, you know, I start to get this sense that something isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I went to her doctor and I just was like, I don't know, something's not right. You know, you're around other moms and you're like, my kid isn't doing the things that other kids are doing.
Right.
She doesn't sleep through the night. And, you know, she's like, I think she's fine. But I said, I don't know. I just feel like something is wrong.
Right.
So she said, let's just wait till she's 2. And we kind of dismissed it. And so I am not a fear-driven person. So I literally put it out of my mind.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, nothing's wrong. We're going to deal with it when she's 2. And
then your mom.
Yeah. So then right before she turns 2, my mom comes and visits us in Wisconsin. And I remember I had walked out of the bathroom and I had overheard my mom talking to my dad. And I could tell that the way that she was, if you know my mom, she's Dutch. She's very loud. So it wasn't like I was standing outside the door eavesdropping.
It's true.
Abby grew up with her. She knows.
She can project.
Yeah, that's where you got it from too.
Yeah.
And
she's telling your dad.
She's telling my dad something, and I can tell that the way she's talking to my dad, they think that something's wrong with Yana.
Yeah, it's not good news.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like all of a sudden somebody kicked me in the gut. And I remember I almost fell over. It was literally like I got punched in the stomach because all of a sudden it was like I connected all these dots
of what you had noticed.
It was for the first time somebody else outside of myself, because you're kind of second guessing as a new mom.
Totally.
I'm not really sure. I don't really know. It was like somebody else sees it. And it was also this thing of I could tell my parents didn't know how to talk to me about it.
Yeah.
And I remember I stumbled to my room and I fell on the bed and just started crying like I've never cried before because it hit me. I'm like, something's wrong
with my kid.
I knew exactly what it was. I'm like, she's autistic.
Wow.
I know.
Like you just knew it.
I just knew it right away.
Wow.
I knew she was autistic.
You're making me cry in this stupid room in the basement.
Yeah. And I remember thinking that there was only one thing that I knew about people with autism. And I had cut hair in a salon, and one of my clients had worked with autistic kids. And I remember her saying like, because I remember asking her, what is it like to be autistic? Like, what do they feel? What do they think? And remember one of the only things I remembered is her saying, you know, there have been some people who've come out of it, but they describe it like feeling like their body's on fire and they can't stop it. And that thought broke me because I thought, man, is that why she cried the entire first year? Is because she was in so much pain, or because she couldn't process it. She couldn't tell us, you know, and I didn't know that she was in pain and I couldn't fix it for her, you know. And I think one of the worst feelings as a parent, but especially as a mother, is to know that your child is suffering and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it'll break you to your core because your instinct is to protect, your instinct is to fix it, your instinct is to do whatever you can to make their life better than yours was, and to know that, and you have to run through the gamut. Like, did I do something? I remember thinking during that time, we had friends who were foster parents, and I had to even work through anger because I remember thinking, like, my friends who are foster parents bring in these babies who parents are doing meth and doing all kinds of crazy drugs, and these kids turn out perfectly fine.
Totally.
After a while,
here you did
I was
everything.
eating organic.
Yes.
This kid had never had like processed food, and here we were. We were dealing with all these health issues and with, suddenly and not knowing. I mean, I think the hardest thing was not knowing what our future was going to be like, what it would look like, and so I spent about 3 days in bed, because I could not cope as a mom. I could not process it. I could not figure out how to pull myself up from it. But it again was in that deep, dark, worst case scenario fear that I found God there, that I found love there like I had never found before. And I remember thinking, like, it even the first time around when we had first moved out to Wisconsin, and I remember thinking, like, yeah, like, this is the deepest, darkest place, but somehow I'm finding the most love and compassion here like I've never known. And so after 3 days, this is my personality. I have to grieve it. I have to fully feel it. And once I decide that, I know, then I'm like, okay, what next?
Yeah, it's a really good balance because you've talked a lot about, like, you can choose what you believe and what you focus on, but you can't do that by just running over your feelings.
Yeah.
You actually have to feel them. You have to cry it out. You have to validate it. You have to give yourself compassion and grace.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have to pull out of that.
Totally. And that's something that people try and skip.
Yep.
I think it's one of the most common things is people think denial.
Oh, yeah.
They'll put denial in place of ownership.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know
empowerment? They'll be like, I'm
fine.
I'm fine.
Positive.
It's great. I'm being positive. That's your denial. You haven't actually connected to the reality that there is pain. There is a problem.
To feel that
You're not
deep
letting that
pit.
even come up.
And then you need to climb out.
And it's because pain feels scary, but pain is the only way out.
Yep.
You know, so it's like I have to walk through the pain. I have to walk through all the feelings and the anger and the depression and all of it in order to get to the other side of ownership.
Yep.
Like, this is our story. And this is what it's going to be.
Yep.
And suddenly, even in that dark place, like, I just was reminded of, like, her name. Like, she's a pearl of great price, and I'll lay my life down for her,
Wow. Did that feel like water to your soul to remember that?
It was a lifeline. In the dark moment, it was a lifeline.
Like that word that you had heard.
Yep.
You knew, like, okay, actually, God knew this was going to happen. This is not a surprise.
Yep.
There is hope.
Yep.
I have actually already been prepared to be able to walk this out.
And I think some people, when you're in victimhood, you could take that as like, God, you knew this and you let it happen and all that kind of thing. But I took it as, you were preparing me for such a time as this.
Right.
The entire time, even our time in Wisconsin, you were preparing me for this journey that you wanted me to go on. And I remember Johnny and I would say to each other, Johnny's my husband, and we would say to each other all the time, like, well, you know what? If she was going to end up with anybody else, I'm so glad she ended up with us, because we're going to love the crap out of this girl.
I know. And
like,
you guys do.
And
you do.
And we do. Like, we just adore her,
Totally.
but we're like, we are so glad that she's ours. Like, we're so glad that God gave her to us because we adore her. And so I remember when we finally went to get her diagnosed, it took a long time to figure out the whole system. It was like a whole new world to me had opened up. And it's like you get dropped in and now you're trying to figure out doctors and what path are you going to take,
which has to be so overwhelming. And it can be so overwhelming and scary.
Oh, it's so incredibly overwhelming, and people have such
and the
strong
choices
opinions
feel high stakes.
Everything
you
feels
could ruin
high
your
stakes.
kid's life if you make the wrong choice.
Absolutely. So, I finally figure out how to get her diagnosed. We get in. It's like a 3-hour process, and And, you know, they're asking us tons of questions. We're answering it all. And then they kind of go and work through all their paperwork. She comes back into the room and she looks at us and she goes, well, she's autistic. And she kind of paused, like waiting for us to cry. But by that point, we had cried out all the tears. I knew that she was autistic.
Like, I've cried a lot.
Yep. I'm like, so we were like, okay, what's next? And? You know?
Yeah.
So she tells us like all the steps that are next and all that kind of stuff. And then she pauses for a moment, and it was like something hit her, and she pauses for a moment and she's like, where did you guys say you were from? And we're like, oh, we're from Colorado, but we've lived here now for a little bit. And she's like, she looks at me and she goes, you know, you are really lucky to live in the state of Wisconsin, because Wisconsin has one of the best programs for autistic kids, so much so that tons of families move here from other states to be a part of our programs, but they have to be on a waiting list, and that waiting list can take a year long. But since you've already, like, you first have to declare residency for a year, but because you've already been here, she's going to get in right away onto the list.
Isn't that incredible?
Well, it was like, again, that moment of like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's funny because she, of course, was expecting me to cry when she said that she's autistic. And when she told me that I was lucky to live in Wisconsin, it was like all of a sudden it had become full circle for me.
Yeah.
Because it was like all of a sudden it made sense that, you know, 7 years ago, when I was asking God, like, why are you keeping me here? Why are you keeping me in Wisconsin? I'm so alone and I'm afraid and I don't have anywhere to go and I feel so stuck. And I felt like he was just punishing me. The truth is that he was actually protecting me.
Yeah.
Because he knew that 7 years later that there would be something or someone that I loved so much more than myself that I would be thanking him. Yeah. That he made me stay where I was so that she could get everything that she needed to get.
Yeah.
And all the help that she needed to receive. You know, so it was like all of a sudden, like all the pieces that didn't make sense. And even though I had surrendered myself to the process and I was happy and I was believing the best, it was like all of a sudden it just completely came full circle and made complete, absolute sense.
Yeah.
I'm like a mess over here. I know the story. I lived through it with you. Every time you tell it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I know the first time I heard it, I just went, and tears just busted from my eyes.
It's like, just such a good reminder because you just can't see while you're in it.
No.
You can't see that something could be working for your good right now.
Yeah.
That actually the story hasn't unfolded all the way, that you don't know what all is going to come into play, that you can't actually see all of the pieces.
Yep.
Like if you would have known, first of all, the truth is if you would have known, hey, in 7 years, I'm going to have an autistic kid and it's good to live in Wisconsin, you would have probably had a complete meltdown. That's why we don't know what's going to happen because we don't have grace for things that we're not in.
I say that all the time. I'm like, had God actually told me like, hey, the reason I'm keeping you here, kid, is because in 7 years, you're going to have a kid
that will scream for 2 years.
Yep. And then you're going to find out that she's autistic, but the services here are so much better. So you're going to be you're really going to be happy. I would have been like, F you, God.
Screw you.
Like,
Totally.
I'm done. Are you kidding me?
This is the worst.
But it's because there's something to process. There's something to unfolding. There's something to the way that life unfolds that it's like what we were saying earlier. Like you said, you don't have grace to see into the future. And that's the reason that we don't. You just have grace for today.
Yep.
And then the other part is trust.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, God, I trust you. I trust the things for my life, and I'm going to believe the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, and we're probably not going to even answer that in this conversation, but I know that when people listen to something like this, whether or not they believe in God or they're atheist but I mean, especially like logic starts going down a route of like, okay, so God made your kid autistic. And then, like, is that what God did? Did God try and teach you a lesson by making your kid autistic? There's all these weird things that go on inside of people's hearts. And there's a lot of questions because we go, how do I deal with these things that feel tragic? And I guess, like, I'm not here to answer that. I am here to point that out because I know how people think.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a struggle that everyone has to go through in their journey of humanity.
Everyone has to.
Everyone
when
has
you
to
live in a world with this much pain
and brokenness,
there's no way to not question, how does this work?
Yeah. Well, if God knew, why didn't he make your
Why
kid
didn't he
healthy in the
prevent it?
first
Why
place?
didn't he tell you the things not to
Right.
do so that your kid
Absolutely.
wouldn't get that?
Were those I just want to know, were
Oh,
those
there's
struggles
still
and
struggles
battles?
to this day.
Yeah.
There's still struggles to this day, but one thing that I recognize really clearly is that pain is a hard thing to process.
Yeah.
And it
Yes.
doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yes.
And if you try to make sense of pain, you're going to talk yourself into a huge pit.
And the story you tell yourself while you're in pain will actually cause you more pain the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Because whatever you make up for why pain exists or why it is in your life, like I remember I made up, because I've had chronic health issues my whole life, I made up the story like, this is how you become a good person.
Yeah.
Is
Right.
through being sick, because I needed to make up a story that made me
That
feel good.
justified it and,
Yeah.
and
That
said
justified
this is worth going through.
But
in
then
that.
what
Yeah.
happened is one day it switched where it was no longer helping me. All of a sudden it had begun hurting me, where I was like, so God wants me to be sick to make me a good person. That's cruel.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
what kind of God
Right.
does that? That's
Right.
horrible.
And I think that for me, like, you know, as I look at situations like this, painful situations that we don't understand, I just look, when we talk about the idea of, you know, looking for the gift, the gift is not saying that, all this had to happen to me so that I could get to this. It just goes, no, here's humanity.
It's
and
broken
it's
and
broken
painful,
and it's shitty sometimes.
and it's messy.
And in the midst of that, can I extract a gift? Can I
Can
extract
I see the
beauty?
redemption moments?
The ability to find redemption.
Can I find the beautiful in the midst of the mess?
And I
Yeah.
truly do, because I've walked this journey enough to know that I'm like, I have that foundational belief that if you want to find a gift in it, you absolutely
100%.
will.
Yeah.
And here's the truth. I'll tell you this. Like when I've walked with people who are walking through really crazy hardship or pain, if you are so focused on the pain, the
Yep.
gift could be right in front of your eyes, but
And you
you
won't
will
see it.
never see it.
100%.
You will never, ever see it. And so, yeah, these deep theological questions about why or did God do this or that, sometimes we don't know the complete answer to that. And
Totally.
I don't know, but I do have an innate trust deep down inside of me
Yeah.
that I believe that all things work together for our good.
Yeah.
I believe that God is good and goodness. And I believe that he loves me. And I believe that there is goodness to be found in this world if you're looking for it. And there's redemption to be found in this
Yeah.
world. That doesn't mean you're not going to walk through pain, but there is always a redemption story on the other side of it.
Absolutely.
I fully
You know?
believe in that.
Yeah. It is very true. And I have seen that in my own life. And Paul Young talks about that in The Shack. He says that pain can clip your wings so you forget that you were made to fly.
Yeah.
And it's really true. I've seen it in this season, in previous seasons that I've gone through with pain, where it feels like just a blinder, where you cannot see, like when I go through pain from abandonment, I cannot see the people who are there faithfully loving me.
Yeah.
When I go through pain of like, it just something happens where pain naturally consumes us. And so it's a muscle that you grew in your life to actually learn how to feel the pain, not ignore it, not shove it aside to be positive, feel it, but then choose to see around it with your hope and faith. And I think that both of us, through the things we've gone through, have had to learn to live in the mystery box, where there's just some things that I think we have decided it's okay that we can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's okay to leave it as a mystery. Yeah.
Right. And I think even for me now, like I actually discipline myself not to go down the road. Like one of my most painful thoughts is, what would she be like if she wasn't how she is? What would she be like if she was quote unquote normal?
Right.
But I have actually, because I'm good at training my thoughts now, I'm like, nope, stop.
That won't
because
help
that
me.
doesn't help.
Nope.
It doesn't produce goodness. It doesn't produce life. It actually causes me to go into depression. It causes me to question why. It causes me to be in a circle. And I can't actually see the gift in her if I'm looking for her to be something else that she's not.
Totally.
You know, so I have to discipline those thoughts, and I have to discipline thoughts that put me as a victim.
Yeah.
You know, and so even
That's
like
very
that
true.
question with God of like, did God cause this or not? I know that God's not made me to be a victim. So I do not think thoughts that put me in a place of victimhood.
So good.
Yeah.
I put myself in thoughts of, this is the reality. Now, what are we going to do about it? And what good is going to come out of it?
Yeah.
How can I like pay it forward? How can I help other parents? How can I love kids who are autistic or have special needs, you know?
And you've also grown from what it has produced in you.
Absolutely.
Like it has transformed you.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that, you know, for us as human beings, we have all these expectations of what our life should be, whether it's based on TV that we watch, entertainment that we watch, or just our own family dreams that we have as a kid and things like that. And really it's a form of control.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And part of it, just as human beings, like the pain starts lessening as soon as we start accepting that I'm really out of control of my external world.
Yeah.
And we learn the lesson that I'm in control of my internal world. I get to manage me. I can't manage this outside of me. And as we start surrendering what we think our life is supposed to look like,
100%.
we buy into like, no, this is my life.
Yep.
It's not just the hand I've been dealt. This is my life. My child is autistic. And where is the goodness inside of that?
Yeah.
What is the beauty inside of my child that I get to discover? What are the beautiful discoveries and treasures along the way that this life holds for me right here?
Yeah.
And what am I going to make out of it?
Yeah. And that surrender is beautiful. Like it's a beautiful surrender.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it, but it's such a beautiful process of being out of control. It's
Yeah.
actually a beautiful
Because we're all out
process.
of control.
Yeah.
We just like to pretend we're not.
And that's the thing. I think we've processed this thought before because you've told me, because we've gone through more hard things in our life. And during hard seasons, I remember you saying like, yeah, it's hard to come to terms with how vulnerable we are as humans.
Yeah.
And how out of control we are. And sometimes walking through painful things reminds you of how out of control you are. But I think actually giving into it and not fighting it is actually a beautiful place to be.
I talk to people about like after this last season that I went through over a year and a half ago or whatever, this idea that I learned that we as humans are deeply fragile and incredibly resilient. It's this beautiful blend of like, no, I actually could be broken in 2 seconds given circumstances.
Yep.
But at the same time, I have this resilience that's formed inside of me and I can rise up above my circumstances. So it's such a weird dichotomy.
It is. It's interesting because Abby and I just got done reading a book called The Happiness Advantage.
Yeah, it's a great book.
And in it, he talks about how they measured like people who became paralyzed, their happiness
before and after.
Yeah, he's a Harvard grad. He's very smart. Somehow they were able to manage.
And they did lots of different. It wasn't just paralyzed. There's lots of different like dramatic life events
that you would think would be like
that would destroy your life,
break you completely.
But he's like, people actually. There were some people who were able to choose happiness that were actually just as happy, if not more, after they had their tragic life event, like becoming paralyzed.
And he actually said that most people stayed, like they didn't, they might have dramatically dropped for a minute, but most people stayed around the amount of unhappiness they had to begin with. Because we adapt. He said humans our survival instinct is to adapt. So everybody, when they imagine a horrible event, imagines that it'll break them.
Yeah.
But actually humans are so adaptable that you can actually find resilience and strength. So I think that this has been such an amazing conversation. Pietze, you have more heart and love and strength and power and wisdom than anyone I know besides my husband.
Thanks,
and we're going to have you on lots more. We're going to talk about what it's like to raise a child with special needs and what that looks like to your world. And we have lots of things up our sleeves planned from this time. And there's so much more to your story. If people want to follow you on Instagram, they should. It's what, Pietze?
Pietze Duffield.
Pietze Duffield. Duffield.
I don't think that's the one you need to spell.
Because our name's more complicated. Yeah. Oh, Pietze. Yes.
No. Pietze.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can follow Pietze over there, and then with us,
like us, review, subscribe.
Yeah,
on
jump
iTunes.
onto iTunes and do that. That's like, we do all this for free. All we ask back in return is to the reviews and subscriptions and stuff like that, because that gets the message out there further. And then facebook.com/
The Connected Life Podcast. And you can follow us on Instagram too. Abby Stumble and Justin Stumble. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, wait. If they're still listening, wait up.
Okay.
Do you have homework for them? You still haven't got this homework thing for them.
Oh, I didn't know we do that every time.
But homework's fun.
Okay, homework's great.
Because for me, like, I would call this, if I look at this episode as hunting for happiness.
Oh.
or hunting for goodness.
Oh.
Because like throughout your entire story, you're actually having to learn how to hunt for goodness and come alive in the midst of it. And so a piece of homework for me is I would like you to sit down, those who are listening want to do some homework. I want you to sit down and write 20 things, hunt down 20 things that are good inside of your life that you haven't actually considered, like what is really good before, especially if you've been through some tragedies. You're listening to Pietze and you're identifying with her, like, yeah, my life has felt like hell in some big areas. I want you to sit down and really push into like, I don't know, let me see if I can get a list of 20 things that are really good, that are available gifts inside of my life. And then,
and I would look for, is there any areas that I need to take ownership that I'm not, like she did when
being a victim.
Yep, where I'm being a victim. Like, what thoughts are there? Thoughts I need to change that are creating this to be worse. I've seen that in my own life in this season, where if I don't manage my thoughts, they will keep me in the emotional tornado. Of the pain of what is happening.
Yeah.
And then the other homework I thought is to just spend some time in like, is there anything in my life I need to actually surrender to and accept? That doesn't mean like you accepting that your daughter is autistic and this role of your life doesn't mean that you don't want to see her get healed and that you're not fighting to do the best for her. It just means you have embraced this season.
That this is where it's at right now.
And I feel like so many people that I've walked with, the hardest thing for them with surrender is they feel like if they surrender that they're saying it's okay.
Yeah. And that's not.
You're not saying it's okay, but you're saying I'm okay in
I'm going to thrive now.
Yep.
I'm not going to wait till it's over.
Exactly.
That's so good. So signing off, how do we want to sign off? Because we're always trying some new sign offs. Pietze, sign off for us.
I love you guys.
Oh, I love you.
That was
And
sweet.
we love all of you listening. Maybe
That's
if you're
Dewey
nice.
Gooey. Goodbye.